Foldable smartphones are in a weird place right now. We've pinned them as the future, as replacements for our traditional slab of glass smartphones, but looking at the Galaxy Z Flip, Samsung's second generation foldable, it might not initially seem like the future. So, I dug a little deeper. First of all though, I was lucky enough to get a retail box of the phone, so let's take a quick look at what it comes with. By the way, I've launched a Galaxy S20 Ultra and 4 Galaxy S20 giveaway, so all the rules for that are in the description. The packaging of the Z Flip is definitely A-grade. There's an outer sleeve with just the letter Z on it, and if we take that off, the word flip. Nice. There's a couple of other interesting things going on here though. For starters, when we take the lid off and look underneath, a separate compartment in which you have not just manuals, but a special case made for the Flip. It's reminiscent of the case that came with the Galaxy Fold, but a little cheaper feeling. It'll be decent at protecting the front and the back, but it'll leave the hinge exposed. You get a card that talks about the design of the Flip, and I personally like touches like this. It doesn't add value to the phone, but it adds value to the unboxing experience. Of course, there's the smartphone below that, but right at the bottom, a 15-watt charger, which is actually the same as the one found on the Galaxy S10 last year. And finally, a USB-C cable for charging, a pair of wired AKG earphones that go straight into the phone's USB-C port, and an adapter to help you transfer stuff from your old phone. To start with then, there's actually a lot to like here. For example, a whole number of engineering improvements from the first Galaxy Fold. It's been tested for the same 200,000 folds, or in other words, 200 folds every day for the next 3 years, but the hinge itself actually feels better this time. It can do what Samsung calls freehold, or hold its position at any point in its rotation, which has a functional benefit. You're effectively splitting your phone into 2 separate usable zones, so you can have your camera preview at the top and controls at the bottom, or one app in one half and another app in the other. We've got this T-shape component right from the get-go, which was introduced in the second batch of Galaxy Folds to keep dust and debris from getting underneath the display, and there is now no gap between the screens when you fold it up. The phone snaps shut, satisfyingly I should add, and when it's closed, it's fully closed, unlike the original. I could go on. The display is now glass instead of plastic, which grants it far better scratch resistance, and of course the phone is far smaller. The Flip folds up into a footprint that is just over half the volume of the original. We're talking the difference between what looks like carrying a lunchbox in your pocket versus carrying a small wallet. For people who wear jeans, especially women's jeans, which are notorious for their tiny pocket size, this is an important difference. And while the display is smaller, it's still a good size, large enough to properly enjoy content on. So, from a structural engineering standpoint, the Z Flip is in many ways everything we hoped a second generation product would be. I even like the idea of this tiny front display, which shows you the time, date, and battery. Those are quite possibly the 3 main things people turn their phone on to check for, so the fact you can do it without opening the phone sort of has a mindfulness element to it. Have you ever just turned your phone on with the intention of checking the time, only then to get distracted by a notification or an app, and end up spending 10 minutes scrolling pointlessly? Yeah, me too, but this kind of prevents that. To get into your phone, you have to make a conscious decision to open it up, so you're only going to do that when you have a purpose. Plus, this micro display can be used to take photos. Admittedly, it's got the wrong aspect ratio to fit the whole image in, but it's enough to be able to roughly frame a shot, and means that you can take selfies using the high-quality rear camera of the phone. That's a big plus point. My only design criticism is that whilst clearly Samsung have done a lot to make this as usable as possible with one hand, it's a little tough to open it with one hand without seriously risking some sort of $1,400 accident. Now, before I can get into what's truly going on here, we've got to address the elephant in the room. This is not the Fold 2. The Z Flip is not a successor to the first Galaxy Fold. It is not a top-tier, pro-grade smartphone, and I'd go as far to say it doesn't even count as a second-generation foldable device at all. Let me explain. For starters, the specifications. For all intents and purposes, this phone has nothing to do with the smartphones it was released alongside. Even though the original Galaxy Fold launched alongside the Galaxy S10 phones as a sort of foldable counterpart to them, the Z Flip has more in common with last year's S10 lineup than it does the S20 phones this year. It has what is essentially the Galaxy S10's camera, with actually the omission of that phone's telephoto lens. No large image sensor as seen on the S20, no 8K video recording, no instant snapping of 108 megapixel photos. It does carry some of the new software features though, like single take, which I love as a concept. If you press one button, the phone takes a whole load of photos and videos for you, so you can sit back and actually just enjoy the moment. The phone still has an ultra-wide camera too, which is a good call, and the nature of it being a flip phone means that you can use that ultra-wide camera for ultra-wide selfies, but there's a few more things that are missing. The Z Flip is limited to 256 gigs of non-expandable storage and 8 gigs of RAM, and that's not the super fast RAM we saw with the S20 phones either. It's okay, just like the 3300 mAh total battery capacity. It's okay, it's fine, nothing special. It uses last year's Snapdragon 855 Plus chipset, which is fast, don't get me wrong, but around 15% behind what the S20 can do. It doesn't support 5G, which, again, not a deal breaker in 2020, but if you're buying a new phone this year, you probably plan to use it till 2022 or 2023, and by then I reckon you'd want the option. And it's also missing arguably the biggest selling point of the S20 series, their ludicrous new displays. Every single S20 ships with a Quad HD Plus panel that can also refresh at 120 times per second. They're just phenomenal, whereas the Flip comes with a still good but not outstanding Full HD Plus 60Hz AMOLED screen. And let's talk about this display for a second. Well, it is super wide. Do you remember when Sony tried to be different and launch an ultra-tall smartphone with a 21:9 aspect ratio? Well, the very nature of the flip mechanism means that we're left with an even taller 22:9 aspect ratio. Two main things to say about this. On one hand, it is a good-looking screen, and it's a definite improvement over the almost square inside display of the first Fold. See, I've been using that phone for 4 months now, and the biggest problem is just that mobile apps, especially Android apps, are not made for squares. Plus, the tallness of this display means that in all feed-based apps, like Twitter, like YouTube, you can fit a ton of content on screen at any one time. The other side to that coin, though, is that for a lot of things, it's a little too wide. Loading up a YouTube video, for example, and these are the kinds of black bars you'll be faced with. You can zoom in to fill the screen, sure, but you'll be losing a whole third of the image. There's also still a noticeable crease going down the middle. Anyways, bringing it back to the main point. On the face of it, this whole thing seems a little weird. Samsung launches these brand new smartphones with absolutely bleeding edge technology and features, but their most futuristic looking phone is actually a generation behind in terms of capability. The Z Flip is, spec-wise, rather underwhelming, especially considering it is as expensive as its absolutely balls to the walls Galaxy S20 Ultra. And let's be very clear, if this thing didn't fold in half, it would be a solid mid-range phone in 2020. So, what on earth is going on here? If this phone isn't for pro users because of its specs, and it isn't for casual users because of its price, why on earth did Samsung launch it? Let me ask you a question. Bearing in mind that the Galaxy S10 phones last year have sold over 40 million units, how many units do you think Samsung has sold of the Fold? 10 million? 5 million? No, around 500,000 units. Samsung knows full well the Z Flip is not going to be an S-series replacement. It is not built for the mass market, or really even to make a big direct profit from. But that's okay, because it is still the best foldable currently out there, and that's more important. It's better than the Motorola Razr we saw last year, more capable and refined in almost every aspect, and for most intents and purposes, an improvement over the original Fold 2, whilst being more affordable. No normal user who just wants the best upgrade to their Samsung Galaxy S8 is going to jump to the Flip, but Samsung knows that, and the way they're marketing this phone gives away what their true intention is. Think about it, this phone was first ever officially shown to the world at the Oscars, one of the most high-end, fashionable award ceremonies in the world. Samsung didn't show any specs, just the fact that it's a phone that can fold and it looks wacky. They then, straight after launching, announced a collaboration with the New York Fashion Week. There's a limited edition version too, but not a collaboration with Star Wars or the Avengers like they've done in the past. This is a Tom Brown edition, a high-end New York-based designer clothing brand. You might be starting to see where I'm coming from. Samsung has purposefully sidestepped trying to make their foldable a pro user's phone, instead playing to its advantages and making it the coolest. The Galaxy Z Flip is not a phone for techies, nor is it a phone for casual users. I think the Z Flip is created to make Samsung cool. Don't get me wrong, the company have a great reputation for quality tech as it is, but there is definitely, in some circles, a tendency for people to pick iPhones just because Apple is considered fashionable, and Samsung wants to change that. Even if Samsung makes no direct profit from this phone, just the fact that it is out there, especially if it gains traction as a luxury design icon, is doing wonders to Samsung's brand. It makes Samsung appear as a manufacturer of not just cool technology, but also class and luxury. So, in conclusion, the Flip serves three roles. A. Almost like a piece of advertising. Just having a phone like this floating around in the public turns people's attention to Samsung. It won't win over the tech nerd who wants 120Hz displays, and it probably won't sell massive numbers, but it will win the hearts of the masses, because, let's face it, it's cool as hell, and it feels great in the hand. B. For the limited but growing number of people specifically in the market for a foldable, this is as good as you can get right now, so the Flip appeals to them too. And finally, as an experiment, the first Fold didn't sell well, but unlike the traditional slab of glass smartphones, foldables can take a number of form factors, and this device is just another example that Samsung hasn't actually decided yet which is the best. If you thought of this as the Galaxy Fold 2, you'd be missing the point. This is just another option compared to the Fold. Don't treat this as a second-generation foldable device. Treat it as a second stab at a first-generation foldable. I wouldn't personally buy it because of this, but from that angle, it definitely has its place. Don't forget the giveaway, rules are in the description, and let me know, would you buy the Z Flip for $1,380? My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss. I'll catch you in the next one.